Welcome to ASWB MSW exam practice test. Our topic today is practice test. Use the link in the description to download the app on the App Store for free practice tests. Number 1. A social worker has been called to conduct a mental status exam, MSE, with an 86-year-old elderly man who is suspected of having early symptoms of dementia. At one point you ask him to interpret the idiom, "People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones." He responds, "Someone living in a glass house has to be careful because stones can break glass." This response represents an example of A. Formal operational thought. B. Concrete operational thought. C. Pre-operational thought. D. Sensorimeter interpretation. The answer is B. Concrete operational thought. Explanation. The client is demonstrating a very concrete and tangible focused interpretation of the concept presented. Other key features of concrete operations include decentration, moving from an egocentric perspective to a view centered within a larger worldview, reversibility, and manipulation of the steps of a process to achieve determined ends. Sensorimeter interpretation refers to the limited use of physical senses and movement to evaluate the world. Pre-operational thought allows for the use of objects in representation, a stick as a sword, etc., without the ability to logically reason or interpret with insight. Formal operations reflect the ability to reason through hypothetical and abstract concepts. Jean Piaget proposed 4 stages of cognitive development, noting specifically that some people do not develop past the concrete operational stage even in adulthood. Whether this client has regressed from formal operational thinking to concrete operational thinking as a symptom of dementia can be assessed by obtaining a history of his prior cognitive functioning. If so, such regression could represent an early symptom of cognitive impairment. Number 2. The human and development and behavior theorist most closely associated with functionalism is A. John B. Watson. B. Alfred Adler. C. Lev Vygotsky. D. William James. The answer is D. William James. Explanation. William James, 1875, researched the function of consciousness as opposed to structure. Other early theorists, in order of theory construction, include the following. Wilhelm Wundt, 1873. Structuralism, term coined by his student, Edward Titchener. Examining the structure, not the function, of the conscious mind, Wundt is considered the father of experimental psychology. Sigmund Freud, 1900. Psychoanalytic theory of personality, Alfred Adler, 1917. Individual psychology, birth order, personality development, self-image, etc. John B. Watson, 1920. Behaviorism, conducted the Little Albert experiment and focused on observable behavior as opposed to mental or emotional states. Ivan Pavlov, 1927. Classical or respondent conditioning, experimenting with dogs, Jean Piaget, 1928. Cognitive development, producing a 4-stage developmental model, Lev Vygotsky, 1934. Child development and social development theory, focused on language and learning processes, Kurt Lewin, 1935. Social psychology, as well as applied psychology and organizational management, and Anna Freud, 1936. Ego defense mechanisms. Number 3. The theorist in human development and behavior who is most focused on moral development is A. Lawrence Kohlberg. B. Margaret Mahler. C. Carol Gilligan. D. John Bowlby. The answer is A. Lawrence Kohlberg. Explanation. Lawrence Kohlberg, 1958, researched the moral reasoning development and produced a 6-stage moral judgment model. Other later theorists who focused on human development and behavior include Abraham Maslow, 1943. Hierarchy of needs, producing a pyramid model of human needs, founded on those most basic and progressing to higher order needs, René Spitz, 1945. Ego development, focused on maternal-child relationships, and identified a form of hospitalism called anaclitic depression, Erik Erikson, 1950. Ego psychology, produced a psychosocial developmental model encompassing birth to death. Margaret Mahler, 1950. Separation individuation, studied maternal-infant interaction, and created a model of developmental stages from birth through 4 years, B.F. Skinner, 1953. Operant conditioning, modifying behavior through consequences, John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, 1969. Attachment theory, the psychological impact of losing important attachment figures, typically the mother, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, 1969. Death and dying, identified 5 grief stages when confronting death, Carol Gilligan, 1982. Feminist social psychology, studied gender differences, and James Carl and Karen Wandre, 1990s. Person and environment system, PIE, theory. Number 4. A key difference between the theorists Wilhelm Wundt and William James regarding cognitive and emotional responses to experiences is A. James felt cognitive processing precedes emotions, while Wundt felt that emotions emerge prior to cognitive understanding. B. James felt emotional reactions precede cognitive processing, while Wundt felt that cognitive processing precedes emotional reactions. C. James felt that cognitive processing and emotions occur simultaneously, while Wundt felt emotions emerge before cognitive processing. D. James felt that cognitive processing precedes emotions, while Wundt felt that cognitive processing and emotions occur simultaneously. The answer is A. James felt cognitive processing precedes emotions, while Wundt felt that emotions emerge prior to cognitive understanding. Explanation. James felt cognitive processing precedes emotions, while Wundt felt that emotions emerge prior to cognitive understanding. Wilhelm Wundt, the father of experimental psychology, posited a structural view of human consciousness. He focused on exploring the basic structures of the mind and the subsequent elements of feeling and sensation that constitute consciousness. From this structural perspective, his research experiments in Leipzig, Germany, utilized a technique called introspection, wherein research subjects were provided an experience and then asked to report their feelings and emotional responses. He did not foresee subconscious or unconscious elements in the mind, and thus his experiments were centered on exploration of the conscious mind. William James, the American father of experimental psychology, believed that the functions of consciousness were more significant and adaptive than the involved structures. Consequently, his work at Harvard University focused on how thoughts and behaviors, mental states, serve a functional role in individual adaptation to the environment. Number 5. Sigmund Freud proposed the concepts of preconscious and unconscious to describe thoughts, feelings and ideas that are outside of conscious awareness, but that nevertheless influence behavior and thinking. The primary difference between preconscious and unconscious thought is A. Unconscious thoughts can never be brought to conscious awareness, while preconscious thoughts can only be brought to awareness with great difficulty. B. Preconscious thoughts can never be brought to conscious awareness, while unconscious thoughts can be brought to awareness only with great difficulty. C. Unconscious thoughts can be brought to awareness relatively easily, while preconscious thoughts are much more difficult to bring to awareness. D. Preconscious thoughts can be brought to awareness relatively easily, while unconscious thoughts are much more difficult to bring to awareness. The answer is D. Preconscious thoughts can be brought to awareness relatively easily, while unconscious thoughts are much more difficult to bring to awareness. Explanation. Preconscious thoughts can be brought to awareness relatively easily, while unconscious thoughts are much more difficult to bring to awareness. Both forms of thought, feeling and ideas, however, actively influence emotions and behaviors, and thus must be accounted for in exploring human thinking and behavioral dynamics. Distressing ideas and experiences that produce negative feelings and/or responses from others may be repressed and pushed out of the conscious mind into the unconscious realm. Repressed experiences, thoughts, and ideas can exert considerable influence on human behavior. Substantial levels of distress from repression can produce psychological or even physiological dysfunction, for example, emotional and somatic complaints. Treatment focuses on delving into and bringing repressed thoughts and ideas back to awareness, tracing the associated symptoms, and reliving the troubling experiences and situations in such a way as to produce constructive resolution. Freud's psychoanalytic theory of personality addressed structure of personality, psychosexual stages of child development, and levels of consciousness. Treatment techniques include free association and dream analysis. Number 6. An 11-year-old boy is seen in clinic for multiple episodes of stealing behavior, exclusively involving the theft of inexpensive toys from a local store. From the perspective of Freud's structure of personality, describe the driving personality force in this behavior and the most immediately effective intervention. A. The driving force is the superego, and the most effective intervention would be an appeal to the child's sense of empathy for the needs of the store's owner. B. The driving force is the ego, and the most effective intervention would be to discuss acceptable ways to meet the desire for toys. C. The driving force is the id, and the most effective intervention would be to cite the negative consequences of the behavior. D. The driving force is the life instinct, and the most effective intervention would be to examine the role of altruism in proper behavior. The answer is C. The driving force is the id, and the most effective intervention would be to cite the negative consequences of the behavior. Explanation. The driving force is the id, and the most effective intervention would be to cite the negative consequences of the behavior, arrest, punishment, etc. Freud postulated 3 personality structures. 1. The id, pleasure-seeking without regard to others' needs or wants. 2. The ego, reality-based, seeking needs in socially appropriate ways. And 3. The superego, morality-based and conscience-driven, replacing the role of parents. This client is still living through the id, and thus will respond most immediately to the threat or imposition of consequences. While most immediately effective, this has poor long-term influence. Next steps will involve teaching prosocial rules through logical cause and effect analysis and understanding, ego development, ultimately followed by superego development, teaching empathy and insight into the needs of others, the role of community solidarity, and collective contributions to the shared social good, etc. The superego includes A. The conscience, the should not of behaviors, and B. The ego ideal, the should that lead to rewards such as personal esteem and self-dignity and pride. Life instinct, eros, refers to energy, libido, driving basic survival, pleasure, and reproductive needs. Number 7. A 46-year-old woman is referred for treatment for nicotine and alcohol addiction. She is also some 150 pounds overweight. The client claims to like smoking with no desire to quit, denies the extent of her alcoholism, and suggests that she doesn't really eat very much. From a Freudian perspective, the client may have a fixation in the following stage of Freud's 5 stages of psychosexual development. A. Latency period. B. Phallic stage. C. Anal stage. D. Oral stage. The answer is D. Oral stage. Explanation. Freud suggested that fixation in the oral stage, the first year, might emerge in cases of infant neglect, inadequate feeding, or overprotection, excessive feeding. The mother's breast, or a substitute, becomes an early object of cathexis, emotional attachment. Thus, a neglected child may become a manipulative adult, seeking to compensate for the neglect, and an overprotected child may regress to untoward dependence upon others. In theory, oral stage fixations become evident in various oral stimulus needs: eating, chewing on things, garrulousness, alcoholism, smoking, etc. The anal stage, 2 to 3 years of age, is not relevant as it manifests in preoccupation with bowel and bladder functions. The phallic stage, 3 to 6 years of age, involves genital discovery and pleasure, as well as mastery of Oedipal or Electra complexes, which are unrelated to this situation. The latency period, 6 to 11 years of age, is not relevant as it focuses on work and play with same-sex friends, with fixation here resulting in later untoward discomfort with opposite-sex relationships. Finally, the genital stage, age 12 to adulthood, would not apply as it occurs with puberty and a return to opposite-sex interests. Number 8. A couple comes to see you. Married just 2 years, they're having difficulty adjusting. He's the youngest in his family and she's the oldest, which seems at the root of some of their problems. For example, she feels he's being irresponsible, and he feels she's being harsh and uncaring of his situation. Specifically, he has been out of work for several months, and she's working a marginal, late-night waitressing job just to make ends meet. She's tired and upset and wants him to take any of a number of jobs he has passed up. He's pushing for something even better than any in his past. To make matters worse, he's been making troubling purchases just for fun, which have caused more financial burden. From an Adlerian perspective, which of the following would best explain their situation? A. Needs hierarchy and separation individuation. B. Ego versus superego conflicts. C. Birth order and guiding fiction. D. Inferiority versus superiority. The answer is C. Birth order and guiding fiction. Explanation: while opposites may attract, mismatching can be complicated. Adler characterized the youngest as potentially dependent and spoiled, and potentially willing to manipulate others into caregiving and support. An oldest, by contrast, tends to be focused on responsibility and control. Both are evident in their conflicts. Further, the spouse's need for a superordinate work position suggests Adler's guiding fiction, an internally created self-image, never fully congruent with reality, is dysfunctionally present, where childhood feelings of inferiority compel him to find success beyond immediate experience or capacity, and to shun any perceived menial work. Needs hierarchy is not Adlerian, as it was developed by Maslow, nor is it applicable here. Ego and superego are not relevant, as Adler did not accept these Freudian constructs. Inferiority and superiority issues are evident, but these concepts do not provide an optimal paradigm from which to pursue treatment. Number 9. An 8-year-old girl is brought to see you by referral from a school counselor. The referral indicates the child is inordinately afraid of being outdoors, refusing recess periods and other normal play experiences. Accompanied by her mother, she seems quite shy and reserved. During the child's intake interview, the mother repeatedly interrupts questions about the child's various fears. Comments such as, "Well, of course she won't want to be on the playground. It's a dangerous place," frequently emerge, along with voiced concerns about physical activity. She could fall, being outside on the sidewalk with friends, a car could come by and hit them, etc. Noting the mother's marked overprotective posture, you draw upon the following theorist in considering a possible etiology of the problem. A. B. F. Skinner. B. Ivan Pavlov. C. Jean Piaget. D. John B. Watson. The answer is D. John B. Watson. Explanation: an American psychologist, Watson developed the concept of behaviorism, which consisted of an objective method of analyzing the cause and effect of identified behaviors. In exploring behavior, he conducted the Little Albert experiment, in which a child was taught to fear a white rabbit, not because of anything the rabbit did, but because of overprotective parental anxiety and chastisement. The initial target of Little Albert's fear was a white rat, but it was readily generalized to a white rabbit. In like manner, this child's fear of going outdoors and certain home situations gradually expanded to a great many other social situations. Both Skinner and Pavlov were behavioral theorists, but both also focused primarily on direct stimulus-response conditioning, action-consequence links, as opposed to the expanded generalized conditioning that was the focus of Watson's behaviorism. Jean Piaget studied cognitive development as opposed to behavioral conditioning. Thus, Piaget could better describe the cognitive threshold required for such complex associations to be made, as opposed to the behavioral conditioning that could produce it. Number 10. A man comes in to see you about a compulsion that is troubling him. Whenever someone brings up something very serious, a family death, grave illness, loss of a crucial job, or other major misfortune, he finds himself compelled to resort to humor to minimize the intense feelings involved. This has offended many people. During exploration of the problem, it is learned that his father was violently intolerant of any expression or display of negative emotion. Drawing upon Pavlovian theory, the client's compulsion can best be described as an A. Unconditioned stimulus. B. Unconditioned response. C. Conditioned stimulus. D. Conditioned response. The answer is D. Conditioned response. Explanation: the word Pavlovian refers to the theoretical work of Ivan Pavlov. An unconditioned stimulus is one that evokes an innate unconditioned response, that means a startle reflex of a loud noise. A conditioned stimulus is one that produces a learned response because it has been paired with an unconditioned stimulus in the past, for example, a rush of elation when your football team scores a touchdown, two experiences that would have no real meaning or response until they were paired and learned. The classic example is that of Ivan Pavlov's research with dogs. Presented with meat powder, the dogs would salivate. Eventually, a bell was added at the point of presentation of the meat powder. Ultimately, the dogs would salivate at the sound of the bell alone, without any meat powder. Thus, an unconditioned stimulus and response, when paired with another stimulus, eventually became a learned stimulus with a learned response. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel for updated videos every week.